Welcome back to Books and Bubbles, the podcast where we sip on tasty drinks themed to our books while we talk about our current book obsessions. I'm Paige.
I'm Bethany.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Maggie.
And today we're going to be talking all about Julia Bartz's newest novel. This is the most unhinged thriller I've ever read. I can't wait to get into everything with you guys. I'm going to go grab our first drink. So for our first drink, we're going to go with a shot of whiskey. There is a part of the book where the night just gets wild and it all starts with a shot of whiskey. So we're just going to go straight for it here. It's the only way to kick this book off. Once you've read it, you'll understand. You're going to be just fine. You've got this, girly.
Oh, okay.
All right.
I really don't feel like I do, but
I feel like if we commit, you're going to be okay.
no, I'm
I'm
salivating
just really
already.
not doing well.
Because you're so excited. You're just like, oh, this is so good.
No.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers. I didn't taste anything just besides something I didn't like, but I can't describe it.
I mean,
can't describe what it tastes
yeah, I was
like.
going to say, I don't taste anything, but like the burning is still happening on the inside.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty smooth, though.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think it was smooth, but my belly didn't like it.
Yeah.
Before we get into our discussion, I want to just do a little bit about what this book is about because it's super unhinged. So if you haven't read anything from Julia Bartz, it's kind of similar in writing style to her first book called The Writing Retreat, in that it's a complete page turner. Crazy things are happening the whole time. She's a New York Times bestseller, so she really knows what she's doing and how to keep you completely on the edge of your seat. But this one's a psychological thriller, and it's going to make you question everything you know the whole way through.
If you haven't read the last session, we recommend stopping here, reading it, and then coming back to join us. Okay, so I have to ask you guys, starting this book up, obviously we start with Thea. What were your first impressions about Thea?
I mean, she seemed pretty normal from the jump. She's working in this psychiatric unit. We learn that she's teaching this like art therapy program to some patients, and we get introduced to her patients. And I don't know about you guys, but I was like really paying close attention to each of the patients and what their issues were, thinking it was going to be so relevant later on and they were going to be involved and things like that. So when we first met her, I was just like, okay, we've got something dark going on, because if we go back to the prologue, we've got this just like ominous story about like basically being in a cave. And then when she's in her first art therapy session, she's talking about this cave and she's like painting it and everything. So that made me think that like it was a dream that she had. So I didn't know what might be going on with her and be linked to her at that time. But my first impression was, you're crazy treating the crazy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I was super intrigued. Her life seemed super hectic right off the bat, and reading that first few chapters felt like I was reading like a Grey's Anatomy episode, but like psych ward edition. Like it was so dramatic and so fun to read.
Yeah, I also kind of just viewed her as like a normal, I mean, not normal, but like a social worker, just like working a typical 9 to 5. I mean, I'm into thrillers, so I read a couple like psychological thrillers. I'm like, this is how they all start. Like I was really getting into it. Like I was really excited to learn who Thea was. And I was also really paying attention to her patients. I was like, a patient is really going to come in and it's going to like steal the show away. So I was wondering like what patient it was actually going to be.
Same.
Yeah, I have extensive notes on each of those.
Yeah, the way I was like underlined. I know people were saying Onyx Storm was a lot of like characters right away, but like this was so many more, and I was like taking such detailed notes about them. And then, I mean, spoiler alert, it wasn't that important.
But yeah, going off of that, like we were learning about each of the characters and the drawings and how they interacted with each other. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, it has nothing to do with any of these patients. And I was like, cool. Okay, now who do I need to like learn and start grasping things about?
Yeah, there's kind of two sides to this book, but while we're still in that psych unit, we have this one very mysterious patient come up. So I feel like we should talk a little bit about Catherine.
Oh, yeah. She's basically catatonic when she comes in. Like, she's not talking to anybody, but Thea really feels a connection to her. And she's like, do I know her from somewhere? And it's like grabbing all of her attention while she's at work.
Was your guys' initial thought like, oh, maybe she's famous? Or did you think maybe she was like a friend or like a long lost cousin or something like that?
I genuinely went like back to shared trauma or something. I thought that the prologue being, you know, about that dream that she had in a cave or whatever, I thought that she might have been related to that in a way. I really thought that it was just like buried trauma that she had no idea about and just kind of like tucked away in a box and was never going to revisit. So I thought that it was her subconsciously remembering something that she had suppressed.
Interesting. I kind of right away, I was like, my hackles were up after that prologue because as soon as I realized that Thea was a social worker, I was like, okay, maybe this wasn't a prologue from Thea. And then I was like super analyzing her patients, like who is it? Who does it belong to? And then when the catatonic patient did come up, I was like, okay, maybe it's her. But I was definitely not believing that Thea had this traumatic past to her.
So I reread the book. The second time I read it, I again started from the prologue. And what I picked up the second time I read it was when they were in the art therapy, Thea drew a cave.
Yeah.
Which I didn't pick up the first time. So as I picked it up, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense why she drew the cave. Because I was like, maybe that was her dream, or I didn't know what I thought it was, or a trauma blocked experience. So I started making the connections earlier on when I reread it for the second time.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I just thought she was crazy.
Like she belongs in the psych unit too.
I was like, you don't know this girl. Like, let's move on here. I mean, she had a lot going on in her personal life, so I was like, maybe she's just reading into this way too much.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, my initial thoughts when I was reading it the same way was, and I think that unfortunately most of the people here have not seen Shutter Island, but I thought we were gonna get a Shutter Island experience. If you haven't seen it, watch the movie. But that's what I thought was gonna be going on.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so
Yeah,
I guess
you guys won't be
either.
able to
I'm
comment
like,
on that. I really highly suggest that you watch it. If you do, then you'll understand where I was maybe coming from at first. But
all right,
that's
so
all I can
tune
say
in
on
the
that.
comments. Let us know.
Yeah, I thought she might have just been like projecting from her personal life kind of going to shambles, because we find out that her like supposedly best friend, who's her roommate, is basically forcing her out of the apartment.
Dude, that was so shitty.
I was so mad for her. I was like, are you for real? Like, this is the
Yeah.
girl that they were supposed to have their like reality TV show, like friend date together, and she like canceled, and she thought this was just them doing that again, like kind of making up for their missed time. And then it was just that she needs to move out of her own home because she wants to move in with her girlfriend. Like,
Yeah. Well, especially
Yeah.
because she was like, okay, like our lease is up. So I was like, okay, like maybe they're both moving out, or like maybe Thea could like renew the lease. And she's like, actually, I'm renewing the lease with my girlfriend. So you actually have to move out. I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, that's so mean.
I thought the same thing. Like, just I thought for sure she was gonna say, "Well, you're gonna have to take on the rent on your own or get a new roommate." But nope, you've been displaced.
Yes.
well, that's the normal thing. It's like if you want to move in with someone else, like you are gonna go figure out
Yeah.
a new place or something. Like you're not kicking out the person that's been the co-signer since the beginning. That's wild.
Yeah, that relationship was so odd to me too, because I mean, I don't know if we want to get into this later, but she's also like a sex therapist, her best friend. And I was like, why haven't you had a conversation with her to be like, hey, this is like kind of what I'm going through? If she is supposedly your best friend.
So I was getting weird vibes from Dom. I was like, I couldn't tell if Dom actually liked Thea. I was like, okay, so Thea's saying they're best friends, but what does Dom think? That was like my initial, I don't know.
Yeah, it seemed like from the beginning Thea was kind of like a little bit infatuated with Dom,
Yeah.
because Thea described herself as like being straight, but then she met Dom and she was like questioning her sexuality too. I think she was kind of a little bit maybe obsessed with her. Like she latched onto her. So it might have been a situation where Dom just didn't reciprocate that level of friendship that she kind of thought she did.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, I think this might be more of a one-sided best friendship. I think, okay, maybe they could be friends. I mean, in my head, I was like, she knew her in college. They're not just living together to live with each other for the convenience. So I was like, there's probably a level of friendship there. But then after learning about the relationship, I was like, okay, maybe she's Thea's best friend, but Dom just considers her a friend.
Yeah.
That very well could be. But still, I'm like, Thea, your best friend is like a sex therapist. Why wouldn't you have this conversation?
Which gets really into, I mean, what you're going into, I think, is just like her background with Ryan and Pastor John and everything going on there. So, like, right off the bat in the beginning, we get a glimpse at Thea's very complicated past. We know that there's somebody in her life named Adam. We've got Pastor John and Ryan. And when she's initially talking about all of this, it's clear that Thea's been through some kind of sexual trauma or grooming situation. And it seems like, I mean, I don't know what your guys' thoughts were initially, but to me, I was like, okay, so Pastor John, predator for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I thought that Adam might have also been hurt by Pastor John because he seemed to be so in on it, or like know what was going on, or like recognize how inappropriate the relationship with. I thought that maybe they had both been abused.
I could see that. I saw like how Pastor John was grooming her. And then when we were learning about Adam, he was saying, you know, I see how he looks at you. He always looks for you first when he enters the room. So I think Adam also saw what was happening, but I'm like, how did he know to look for that? So I can see, maybe I never put the 2 and 2 together, but I can see how maybe it could coincide.
It also made sense to be with Adam's inappropriate sexual behavior. Like if he's been hurt, he's going to hurt others potentially, because unfortunately that's sometimes how the trauma plays out.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I didn't think of Adam's perspective with the sexual abuse. I just thought of him as like a bully.
Yeah, me too. I didn't connect that either, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of things I didn't connect was until I actually reread it for the second time. So I will say, if you read it the first time and you enjoyed it, definitely read it the second time, because you will pick up on a lot more than when you read it the first time through.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this book.
There's so much.
Did this read like a soap opera to the rest of you?
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
I was like eating it up so fast. I was like, tell me what happens next.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in it for the novella. Like, let's go.
So good.
You guys should read her other book then, because it's very similar in writing style. Like it's so much fun and so like unpredictable and ridiculous, just like this book.
And that
So-
was the writing retreat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that one's like a book about basically authors. They're going to this writing retreat together. They're kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it's with this like famous author. So they're all like super excited with the opportunity to like write with her.
Ooh.
And then again, secluded retreat, winter time, like
That sounds
it's
good too.
winter time.
Oh.
Ooh.
Well, after reading this, I'm like, that's intriguing.
Yeah.
That is definitely intriguing.
Yeah, it was really good. I don't know. Like it definitely, going back to just everything with Thea though, and her grooming experience and everything that you have to understand with, you know, Pastor John and Adam and everything that happened. She had been with Ryan, or I guess it recently ended with Ryan. What were your guys' initial thoughts, like when she broke it off with him? Because all we kind of knew was that she tried to be honest with him about some kind of sexual thing that she was doing in bed, and he said he was uncomfortable and didn't want to be a part of it. Did you guys pick up right away that it was a grooming situation, or?
I was waiting for like some kind of traumatic sexual history. And when because I think the words that he said to her was like, I'm sorry, that makes me uncomfortable. I feel like I'm just a sex doll. I was like, okay, wait, what happened? That made me almost like double back on because where I thought their story was originally going was like Pastor grooms young girl and he rapes her. But if you read the book, you know that that's not how it actually went. So when we got that kind of carrot from Ryan's POV, or not even his POV, but like their backstory, I was like, what did actually happen? And I wasn't sure what really to expect, but it definitely wasn't what we got.
Yeah, I kind of, for some reason, just thought it was going to be super dark and that he did groom her, but she was still like, would think about that during sex because, like, you know, grooming can be pretty effectively make you feel like you're like super connected to that person and in love with them. So that's where my brain went. Obviously, that wasn't accurate either.
So when I first read the scene with when her and Ryan were ending things, I reread it because I was like, what did I miss? Like, I missed the experience. I don't know what it was. So I also was I was more confused because, like I said, I like things like spell out for me or else I'm not going to pick up what was happening. So I was like, I don't really know what's happening. I think there might have been a grooming. I thought she had sexual encounters with Pastor Paul too. So that's kind of where I was going. I thought she was almost in love with Pastor Paul, and she was like, that's who I think about when I am having sexual encounters. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. And again, that also wasn't necessarily true.
Yeah, it is Pastor John. No, it's okay. It is Pastor John, but we had a Pastor Paul in the last book we covered, so that's fair. But just in case you're listening
so
and you're like, why
sorry.
are we swapping between these two names?
So sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We had another pastor that was very influential in the last book we covered, so... Yeah, but that's just like, it's another layer of things that she's going through, and what made me think she was just crazy when Catherine shows up. Because I'm like, dude, she has this friend who's kicking her out. She's got this super traumatic past, and then her boyfriend, who she was very in love with, left her over her traumatic past. Like, she's going through a lot of
Oh my
shit.
gosh. Yeah, can we talk about her alcohol use too? In the beginning, I was like, girl, you're about to be rehabbed. Like, after several of the, like... I mean, if you read the book, I don't know if everybody else picked up on it, but I was like, this is not a healthy relationship with alcohol at all.
No, I like having a drink on the weekends with the girls, but she's like, I drank every single day for the last year. I was like, that's not okay.
Yeah.
I was like, let's talk about it. Let's unpack what is happening.
Yeah, and she does talk about it a little bit later in the book where she's like cut off from alcohol, and she's like, "Oh, I didn't really understand the whole addiction thing, and I'm not addicted, but I drink every day."
Dude, I was like, girl, you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I just couldn't understand how she didn't understand that she had a problem, which is even scarier, I
Yeah.
think, in itself. And it's like, if you know that you have an issue, and you would think if you're working in a psychiatric unit and you're around people that are probably struggling with different issues like this, that it might be something that you recognize in yourself. And to me, it was just like an extra layer of like kind of pity or sadness for her character, where it's like, clearly you've gone through these traumatic experiences, but you don't seem to be doing anything to try to make yourself better.
Yeah.
And that's sad. She needed somebody to reach out.
Yeah, that reliance on alcohol didn't seem to be like a part of her thought process.
Yeah.
But
No.
reading it, it very much seemed
She was
like,
just like, I drank.
it was weird to me that she didn't see like, oh, traumatic event that I'm thinking of, alcohol. But
Yeah,
like as a
okay.
reader, it was very clear that that's what she was doing.
Yeah.
And I think part of it too is she didn't really have a good support system. Like you think that's going to be Dom, and then obviously isn't, and you know she doesn't really have the greatest relationship with her parents. Like it doesn't seem like she really has people in her corner.
Well, I'm bringing it back to that. And again, with the whole therapy talk, why didn't she talk to Dom? She's her friend. She's also a sex therapist. We learned she doesn't have a good relationship with a therapist in general. So she used to have one, and her therapist kind of dropped her. So it was almost like, I know she's a social worker, but is she holding some resentment towards therapists? So I was almost curious what everybody thought. Like, I know she has a problem with alcohol. She's not seeing a therapist, but do we think she was holding resentment towards her past therapist, so she wasn't inclined to getting a new one?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I didn't
Yeah.
think of that, but now that you spell it out, I can see that. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
second read.
Sarah's second read through.
I'm telling you, it was really good to read it for the second
Yeah.
time.
I mean, she really does seem to just like, if you take it that way too, it's almost just like abandonment issues, because she goes to talk about her trauma the one time with Ryan, who she thought she can trust. And then he says, nope, I'm out. Her therapist says, nope, I'm out.
Yep.
And her parents aren't around. Like, I mean,
And
and
then
it-
her roommate kicks her out. So.
yeah, abandonment
Yeah,
issues.
I guess that is all abandonment.
Yeah, and that's why she doesn't have good relationships. She talks about her relationship. So I was like, yeah, I was like, there's definitely some deep stemmed trauma within
yeah.
her.
And that's why she
Yeah.
clings so hard onto this whole Catherine thing, because
Yeah.
I feel like reading it, you're like, why are you so obsessed with this? Like, just move on, like treat the
Yeah.
patient, and then we move on with our lives. But she did not seem to be able to do that.
All right, we are back with a white wine Pinot Grigio. And the reason why I chose this drink is because Thea prefers a white, but she's willing to drink anything, as we kind of got into a little bit. So, in honor of her preferences, let's have a Pinot Grigio.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, I like Pinot Grigio.
That was good.
We discover that the connection between Thea and Catherine is that Catherine was a star of this movie called Stargirl. And Thea was very obsessed with this while she was growing up. And we get a little bit of an inkling as to why that is and why she latched onto this so hard. In this movie, there's this main character named Thuya, which is kind of similar to Thea's name, which is interesting. But basically, she's like 13 years old. She's this goddess in Egypt. And she's essentially groomed by the pharaoh. And I think that Thea kind of latched onto this because she saw a similar power dynamic between the pharaoh and Thuya as she felt between herself and Pastor John.
So yeah, Thea's got this crazy connection to Catherine, because in her head when she was 13 watching this movie, she really felt seen in this. And she also looks similar to Catherine.
Yep.
And genuinely in her head, like, thought they had this connection when she was younger. She was obsessed with this. It wasn't just a movie she saw. It was part of her personality as a child.
Oh yeah, she had posters all over her wall of Catherine. Yeah.
Yeah, and the main lead, or one of the main leads, is also her teenage crush, which also makes it that much easier if you see yourself in the main lead who's having this romantic scene, if you will, with your teenage crush. You're obviously going to be like obsessed with it.
Yes. So we learn all about, Stargirl and how important that was. And then we make the connection that Catherine is the girl that was the star of Stargirl. So Thea recognizes this. She's going into work. I know who this woman is, and she's ready to confront her. And that interaction ends up being kind of weird. And Catherine ends up basically trying to kill her, like to stab her with a pen. Like she's gone from catatonic to communicating in very violent ways. So we see Catherine going from 0 to 100, and we know that something has to be going on. And it seems to be tied to this Stargirl thing, because that seemed to be her trigger for whatever reaction she was having to Thea. And she's not being like 100% honest about whatever's going on with her. She's being very closed off. And then she starts really getting into asking Thea about her own life. And she's asking her about her birthday. We find out that they were both born on the same exact day. And they're both seeming to be under the impression that they are twins, like separated at birth somehow. Even though they both had completely different parents, they look alike. But I mean, it felt like a stretch to me. What about you guys?
Yeah, I noticed on my second read through that she also asks her this early on about reincarnation, which I didn't catch the first read through, but she right away starts asking Thea about reincarnation and what she thinks of that. So I think that she immediately was clocking, like, we have the same birthday. Like, what if we're just like the same person reincarnated?
I still kind of thought Catherine was, for lack of a better term, like a little crazy, because she was like, it's all your fault. It's all your fault. And I'm like, no, I just think she went from like a catatonic state to, I didn't think she was lucid. I thought she was actually like just crazy and just like talking about something. Like she thought that Thea was somebody that she wasn't, and then she was just kind of being crazy, and then kind of attacked her for doing something that Thea didn't necessarily do. So I was kind of in a state of denial that she doesn't know who she is and she's not really lucid. But then later on we find out this isn't going to be the only time that Catherine accuses her of something being her fault.
Okay, so Thea is convinced also that she looks like Catherine, which, I mean, it's a, you know, it's a book. We can't really see and judge ourselves. So my question for you guys is, who is your celebrity lookalike, or who have you heard you look like?
So I don't think I necessarily look like any celebrity, but I do have blonde hair for those of you that are listening. And the only person I was ever told I looked like was Jeanette McCurdy. So I was told from the iCarly, specifically iCarly. So I was in AOE, shout out AOE. It's a sorority, the engineering sorority. I had somebody that used to call me Jeanette. And everybody was like, there is no Jeanette, like, in our sorority. Like, who are you talking about? And every time she said Jeanette, I would answer because I knew she was calling me Jeanette McCurdy. But that was the only time that I ever had anybody be like, oh, you kind of look like this person. It was just the blonde hair. We don't really look too much alike, but it was still funny. So that was the only time I was ever, like, referred to a celebrity.
I kind of see it, though.
Yeah, I totally see it. The second you said Jeanette, I was like, oh, yeah.
I've had this comparison a few times, but there was this time I didn't know who this was because I've never seen this show, but I was at like a Whole Foods that was next to my college campus, and somebody walked up to me and asked me if I was the girl from Gilmore Girls. I think her name's Rory, but I've never seen the show. And I was like, no, I'm not. And they're like, no, you are. Like, can I take it? And they were asking me, like, if they asking me questions. I'm like, no, I promise I'm not. And then I ended up looking up, and this girl's like 40 or something. I'm like, what? I'm like 19 years old. Excuse you.
They had just watched it for the first time that day, and they were like,
that's her. Yeah, I've had that comparison a few times, but I've never seen the show, so I don't really know. But.
Yeah, I can see it.
I mean, I guess I've gotten a couple. There's one ice skater that you might be able to tell me who this person is. I think her name is Meryl. She's like an Olympic ice skater.
Oh my God, I've met her.
You did?
Oh my God.
I had some people come up to me at the farmer's market a few times when I was working at the farmer's market, and they were like, you are her.
Meryl
and I was
Davis,
like,
right?
yes, that must be it. And I was just like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I just kind of like work here. I can't ice skate.
Okay.
And that's what
I
got that one.
Yeah.
And then I've been also told that I look like a girl that plays Lady Grey in one of the X-Men movies, but I can't remember the name of the actress.
I can so see you being somebody in an X-Men movie.
I feel like you actually look like Meryl Davis now. Like, I'm not going to unsee
Oh,
that.
really?
Yeah.
Oh,
like,
no.
Actually. She's from Michigan, so maybe you're just some long-lost relative.
Oh, is she really from Michigan?
Yeah,
That's
she
so
went
interesting.
to U of M.
Okay. Maybe that's why they genuinely thought it then, because they were like, no, like, you must be lying. And I was like, definitely can't ice skate. So
We ice skated once, and
I-
you're like one step away from Meryl Davis.
Oh.
Yeah.
Baloney. Baloney.
But then he's like, I see the
You know how much my
resemblance.
ankles hurt?
The one celebrity lookalike I've gotten quite a bit is actually Amy Adams. For those of you listening, I do have red hair and like bluish eyes, like light eyes. So I get that quite a bit.
I could see it.
Yeah, I
Quite
loved
a
her
bit.
in Enchanted.
Yeah, she hasn't been doing much lately. I don't get it often.
No, she's cute. I like that. I agree.
Thanks.
So she thinks you're cute.
She thinks I'm cute. You think you're cute.
He is super obsessed with Catherine.
Yeah.
And seems to be like, I don't know, she has a weird thing going for her. So who would be like your celebrity that you would be down bad for?
Honestly, it wouldn't be a woman. It would have to be like One Direction or something. I don't think I could
Wait,
look.
who in One Direction though?
Who and what? Okay, I was telling Paige this earlier. So in my childhood, I was definitely a Louis girl, but I was also a Louis girl with intention because I was like, Louis and Harry are best friends. So like, why choose? So it would just be One Direction. It wouldn't matter who came in. I'd be like, yeah.
I was thinking personally, when I was 13, who did I have an infatuation with?
Ooh.
And let me tell you, I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie Billy Madison,
Yeah.
Adam Sandler. Follow him to the end of the earth. I was obsessed with him. Not for like an attraction reason, but I was like, this man is so funny. I absolutely love him. And Billy Madison, he was hysterical. So Billy Madison, Adam Sandler, that was my movie. I watched it every single day in the 8th grade when I was 13. If I didn't watch it, it was a bad day for me. So mine had to have been Adam Sandler.
That's funny. Yeah, I like locked onto this question as just like, who would I go psycho for? A celebrity? Like I tunnel visioned it because I was like, ooh. Mine is definitely, I don't know if you guys know who Adelaide Kane is. No? Okay, hold on.
Pull up the pig.
So she is an actress. She started in the show Reign. It's like Mary, Queen of Scots.
Oh.
I know what you're talking about. I
Okay.
haven't
Yeah.
seen it, but
No, I
I've been wanting
don't.
to.
I don't pull it up.
She's so fine. Hold on.
She's so fine.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I asked my husband before I left. I was like, "There's this question. Like, who do you think my answer is gonna be?" He's like, "That's the easiest question I've ever heard in my life." Like, of course you're gonna say Adelaide Kane. I was like, "Thank you."
Well, I had that moment with Emily too. So Emily and I were driving here, and I was like, I don't know, like who I'm gonna pick. Like, I don't know who I was actually like obsessed with. I was like, it depends, like what age. When I was younger, I was like Zac Efron. My friend, we would have a sleepover all the time, and we would watch High School Musical 1, 2, and 3.
Ooh.
So I was like, Zac Efron. I love Zac Efron. I know all his songs, but I was like, okay, like that's so cliche. And she's like, well, you know who mine was. I was like, I do. She's obsessed with Selena Gomez. Still to this day. So I was like,
fair.
I was like,
Yeah.
fair.
So
That's
fair.
a good one.
Yeah.
So she's like, you know, when we had those flip phones, I had every single Selena Gomez ringtone, blah, blah, blah. And she's like going off. And I was like, okay, cool. Why did I not have the same experience when I was a child? I was like, why
Adam
can I not
Sandler.
think of anyone? I'm like, Adam Sandler. I was obsessed with him and Billy Madison.
I was like,
Not
this
be more
40-year-old,
different.
I think I like him.
I guess like at 13, give me Nick Jonas. Give me Cole Sprouse.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
baby.
I was a Dylan. I was Dylan.
You were a
Sprouse.
Dylan girly.
I was.
Dude, I
I
couldn't
thought
tell them
Cole had
apart.
the
I
brains.
don't know who those were at that age.
Sweet Life is Zach and Cody.
I didn't watch
Nah,
that.
Bethany was homeschooled.
Yeah. Missed out on two
kidding.
heartthrobs, which might I say they are still very attractive.
Oh,
Both of them.
absolutely.
Did you
and
guys
Cole
watch-
is so cute.
Did you watch Brittany Broski?
Broski? Yes. Yes.
Yep.
I
Oh,
showed
I
it
saw
to
him on
Bethany the
that.
other day.
Yeah.
Hysterical.
Dude, they should get married. 1000%.
It was hysterical.
I thought it was the best, like, just interaction between two people where I'm like, oh, do you not see the soulmate? Because I do. And I was dedicated to the
You were
project.
like, I'll plan the wedding.
Oh, 100%. But yeah, I really liked Cole Sprouse and Nick Jonas.
Oh, yeah,
Jonas
Nick
was,
Jonas.
he was just a teddy bear.
Yeah, he did have those like the curls, I feel like.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But like as an adult, if you had to ask me,
Uh-huh.
I know you guys all hate to hear it. Paul Rudd all day.
The most average looking man.
Are you kidding?
Who I'm picturing,
Paul
I'm
He's
Rudd.
confused.
Ant-Man and just perfect.
He's the
I-
most
What?
basic
Do
looking
you see how
white
my
man.
like sweater just
Dude.
fell off subconsciously
He's
as I said
56.
Paul Rudd?
Yeah. That Paul Rudd.
56.
I don't want to. He's the sexiest man alive. What are you talking about?
What?
Bruh. As
Aside
an
from brain
adult.
That one I can't buy into.
No, you're wrong. I know the perfect way to get through this because we clearly need to talk about this.
Yeah.
Top 5, ladies.
Top 5.
Top
Okay,
5.
Top 5.
Top 5
All right.
celebrity crushes. Let's go.
Like as
13
of 13
or,
or
like,
like
just
as
now?
of today?
Whatever your heart feels.
Oh.
Okay.
Top 5.
I gotta
Oh,
go
God.
13. I gotta go 13 because if I go now, it's like too real. But if I
Okay,
go
but yours
13,
is One
it's like-
Direction. Next.
Okay, wait. If I be real top 5, it's not all of One Direction.
Okay.
It's like we got Harry and Louis in there, obviously.
Niall?
Hosier is gonna be in there. Niall might sneak in at number 5. You know what? I don't think I started hoeing for Niall until he came out with Slow Hands, and then I was like,
Okay.
Niall. Niall. I would have to go with probably Cole Sprouts was definitely in there.
Cutie patootie, man.
He was, you know, and you know what?
Trying to
Number 5
pinch
could
his
be
little
Dylan
cheeks.
because they look basically the same. All right, who's going next on the top 5?
Oh my God. Shamar Moore. Or what's his name? In my ears. Was that his name? Because he was hot in Criminal Minds.
Oh yeah.
Spencer
Oh.
Reed, too. We could throw it to him. Oh my God. We
my
need to
God.
move on from this question.
Okay, so Thea realizes that, you know, once she realizes who Catherine is, she's going to leave soon. She's going to go home to her parents. And of course, the way that Thea has to cope with it is to go to the bar. And in that moment, she meets like this cute man, right? And he ends up coming back to her place and they're chatting. His name's Jonah. I need to know if you saw the red flags as fast as I did on Jonah.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
ma'am.
Yeah. As soon as I thought it was a meet cute at first. I was like, oh, this is adorable. As soon as they got back to her apartment and she's like trying to drink and like have a good night and he's immediately grilling her with questions. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, you're a reporter. But
I thought the same
Yeah.
thing. I was like, you're trying to write an article, dude. Like,
Yes. Same.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I was like, as soon as he like went in and like, I think they said like he like went in and sat on the couch and she like opened 2 beers and like brought it to them. And then he just like grilled her, went to the bathroom, shut the door and then left. I was like, he's there for different intentions than she was there for. So I was interested to see what his connection was going to be in the future. Again, I need everything spelled out for me. So I'm like, who is he? So I was very intrigued to see when the next day when Thea wakes up late for work, she goes to work and then outside is Jonah. And then we learned Jonah's connection kind of was that Catherine's parents hired him as a PI.
Right. And we find that out after like Catherine's disappeared. And now we're trying to figure out where did Catherine go? We thought she was getting picked up by her parents, but we find out that it's somebody completely different that picked her up and her parents are there. Jonah's been hired by them to figure out what's going on. And it's just a complete mystery. Like, where the heck did Catherine go?
yeah, did you guys think it was like random that she left the unit? Like, did she check herself out? Were you suspicious of that?
I did think like she had a scheduled pickup time. So at first when Thea was like, oh, she's already gone, I was like, yeah, no shit. Because like the world doesn't revolve around you. Like, I don't know. Maybe that was a little harsh, but I was already kind of seeing some cracks in Thea's mindset. So I was like, I don't know if this is as you-centered as you feel like it is. And then I was not expecting her to be kidnapped, though. That one kind of took me aback. I was like, oh, okay, maybe there is more going on.
What would you consider it? Kidnapping?
I mean,
You
she left
didn't?
willingly. Not like she was dragged out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like, I don't know if I would have considered it kidnapping. She obviously knew who they were. She could have yelled for help. She was in a space.
So
where...
that's my question. Do we think she knew who picked her up?
Oh, absolutely. Because at that point, it seemed like she was more aware at the time, and she had already gone out of her way to listen to the podcast. So I feel like she knew who those people were when she was, you know, going to see them and everything. My question for you guys with that is, did you guys have anybody else that you thought was responsible for having taken her? Like, did you guys have any suspicions on who it was at the time?
I was really suspicious of that therapist that claimed to be her therapist in the past and left that number, because after she disappeared, Thea talks about how she at some point calls that number and it's disconnected. It's not a number anymore. And Catherine had taken that phone number from her. So I thought it was something to do with, I think his name was Clint. I didn't have any suspicions other than that, but it seemed like that maybe was connected.
I thought that it was going to be Melissa and Adam
Oh. Tell
I don't
us
know
more.
why. Like, it was just because, like, she'd been talking about, like, the whole reunion thing and they were wanting to see her. So I wondered if it was, like, a weird thing, like, they were reaching out in a way to try to get closer to Catherine. And with it being a guy and a girl, I was, like, looking way too hard at Melissa and Adam throughout the entire book. I was just like, when are you coming back? What is your purpose? You must be involved.
Interesting.
That is so interesting because
It drove me nuts.
I did just feel like she sent like a really drunken, hateful Facebook message and just like moved on from it. But that's so interesting. I was not looking for them to I could see why you were going that way though.
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
didn't really think about them playing more of a role into the book. I did feel like I wanted her actual parents to play more of a role because they did show up to pick her up. They seemed concerned, so I thought that they were going to come into the story a little bit more than they did.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, surprised I didn't.
Do we think the way Catherine described her parents was a true representation of them? Specifically, her dad, we learned a little bit more about later on in the book. And we learned that Catherine said she was having these dreams. And then her dad would make her describe them to him. And then he created a movie based off of her dreams. And that's how Stargirl was created. So do we think that that is their true relationship, that he truly was trying to pull out this star from Catherine?
Oh, yeah. I think that her parents were basically using her as a cash cow, as most, I think, unfortunately, like child stars are potentially used. I mean, I guess that's a pretty big statement to make, but I think it's unfortunately just part of the nature of the beast when you are dealing with child stars, that oftentimes there's somebody else pulling the strings that may not have that child's best interest at heart.
Yeah, a lot of times throughout the book, I was curious of, is Catherine enjoying being in New Mexico and at this retreat center vibes, being away from her parents, or did she need help and the right place was going to be not necessarily back with her parents, but like in an inpatient and getting help? I was curious what everybody else, as they were reading, kind of thought about that.
Yeah, I feel like she had trauma from her childhood and didn't know a good outlet. And so I feel like it was almost easier for her to get into that weird cult situation than it might have been for most people because she was looking for that community and that sense of belonging somewhere.
I don't think she was necessarily upset or in harm's way being there, but I do think that Thea was in harm's way when she was there. So I was having a struggle kind of putting Catherine there and Thea there. So I'm like, is one of them in trouble and one of them not? Or is truly like everybody that goes here in danger? Because we kind of see that not everybody that goes there is in danger. So it was so weird trying to form the connections as I was reading with who's a part of the quote unquote cult and who is just there for the therapy-esque session.
So before we get into the retreat in New Mexico, though, the reason that Thea goes there in the first place is because she discovers basically a clue that she thinks that Catherine left her that led her to going in the first place. Did you guys think she was justified in that reasoning?
The dollar tag had me so shocked when she was like, it's $5,000. I was like, wait, you're actually going? I don't know if that's the smartest move, given that your roommate's kicking you out and you're like, I don't know if I can afford an apartment in this area again without a roommate. And I was like, oh, but you're going.
$5,000 done.
Yeah, I was like so like clutching my pearls at the dollar amount. I don't know if that speaks to like I'm poor or what, but I was like, oh.
Well, I was gonna say no, that's an insane amount just to be like, oh, and then I'm just gonna claim I had a really bad time and I didn't have my awakening that everybody else does, and I'm just gonna ask for the refund that they guarantee. And I was like,
Yeah,
I don't think that's how this is gonna play out.
Just on like a hunch, like it gave me stalker behavior because she's like, there's this crumb of potential evidence that maybe something's going on. But we also know that Catherine's done stuff like this in the past. Like we learned from, I think, her parents that she has like emptied her bank account, and I'm sure it was for this retreat in the first place, but she's had this behavior previously. And even Thea's boss like clocks that she's got some kind of like obsessive behavior because even she's telling her like, hey, like let's just move on. Like that patient left. There's nothing we can do at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was in a different boat where I was just like, you know what? She did leave clues. And it was just the lies that she had told about it, like who she was saying that like she'd borrowed the other person's headphones and things like that, where I was just like, okay, things weren't like adding up though. Maybe I just went too far into it, but I was just like, yeah, absolutely, that's a clue. And it, to me, just fed way more into the story, and I was just like, go girl, yeah, check it out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I did start getting like super soap opera vibes, where I was like, oh, and we're just going.
Yeah.
Money's not an issue. Let's just make it happen
Absolutely.
for the plot, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. I thought they were clues, definitely. I mean, I thought that, so she left a note in a crayon box knowing that Thea does group art therapy. And I was like, how else are you to interpret that besides it being a clue? So that was my first thing, where I definitely thought that it was a clue. And then my second thing was what the note said. So it said, thank you for letting me use your headphones, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, it wasn't my headphones. It was somebody else's phone to like let me investigate a little further. But I think the part I would have stopped investigating was she was just listening to like a podcast. I don't think I necessarily would have listened to the podcast and then went ahead and be like, oh, this is where she's going to be, and now I'm going to go see if she's okay. That's
Well,
where
they
I
mentioned
would've
her
drawn.
in the podcast, though. So I can see
Yeah.
where that's where it's just like, okay, like for sure. And then he said it was an accident later, but I don't know if it was.
Well, they said they weren't going to use her real name, and then they used the name Catherine.
Right.
he was like, maybe subconsciously I was calling her back or something. But
you have like
Loney.
7 members, so like how did you lose track of names after
Yeah.
7?
No.
Like,
No. And she just ends up like running off to this retreat then, and she's spending all this money. And I mean, I was all for it. But yeah, should she have? Probably not. No. But she decides to go to the retreat, and we find Jonah there
Yeah.
again.
yeah.
I
Our-
was not surprised when Jonah was there.
I was shocked.
Were
I
you?
was like, what?
I knew.
No?
No, I knew.
I just blindly trusted that Jonah was who he said he was. I don't know.
Well, as soon as
I believed he was, because he presented himself as a private investigator for the parents.
Yeah.
So I believed that he was playing that role
Oh, me
at
too.
that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it made sense to me why he was there. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, this is just where his
Yeah.
investigation led him.
I just didn't expect him to have found that, because that seemed like such an obscure like thing to have located, is like that random podcast that mentions her name. I don't know.
Me
Yeah.
thinking like he found her phone somehow, or like
Well,
knew she was mentioned
I
that she
was-
was going to be coming back.
I was thinking that since Thea told him what she did for work, he put the clues together where Catherine actually was. I think he went there that morning and scoped it out to wait to see who was going to pick her up and where that was going to trace him back to, or where it was going to trace Catherine to. So that's kind of where my mind went as to why he ended up there. I don't think he necessarily was there because of the podcast or because he heard the podcast. I thought he was there because he was a PI and he saw her, quote, parents picking her up. So that's kind of what I put the 2 and 2 together from. But I don't know. I just sometimes I'm like, oh, you know, he was mentioned. He's going to have a more significant role. And then all of a sudden he was there at the retreat in New Mexico. And I was like, yeah, you know, I could have seen that. But I totally the whole time thought he was a PI.
All right, now New Mexico gets super crazy. So before we get into all of that, let's do a quick bubble break.
As you can already tell, we got a little bit chatty in this episode, so we decided to split it into 2 parts. So head on over to part 2 to continue our discussion.